So welcome everyone to the Lusitanian Forum for 2025 as part of this year's PALCUS Gala Weekend activities. Just a quick FYI, we are recording this and we will be taking some photos of the room. So if you don't want your photo taken, just let us know and we'll be sure to either blur you out or not include you in the photo. But we're really excited to have you all here, especially we have quite a few folks online. And we're here to talk about Portuguese in our schools and what can we do to get Portuguese offered. So if I speak here, is that better? Okay. What can we do to get more Portuguese classes offered in local schools, whether that be public schools, private schools, elementary, high school, what have you? My name is Angela Simoes. I have been involved with PALCUS since the dawn of time. No, I'm kidding. Since for many, many years. And I think we just have a couple of housekeeping things here. If you do have a question and you're online, you can raise your hand on the Zoom or type your question into the Q&A. Or if you're watching, I didn't go live on Facebook yet. Okay, you got to give me a minute to do that, I think. Hold on. How do I do that, Gracie? I don't think we're able to. We're not? Oh, okay. Well, then skip that. Oh, okay. We'll post it later. So forget the Facebook question live. So just type your questions there. And if you have additional questions, you can always email them to us afterwards. So today's session is the agenda. It's very simple. We only have a couple of hours, so we're going to try and get through this quickly. We'll have a few panelists talking about their experiences and the work that they've done. Then we will have some discussion about what are the challenges, what are some best practices and lessons learned. And then we really want to get to some action items. How can we put a plan in place to replicate what has been done, tools to make it happen, and then also how do we communicate what we're doing to encourage more people to take up this challenge of getting more Portuguese programs in schools. Okay, so just kind of a level set. According to our gateway, which is our online database, and the research that we have done, this is what exists in the United States as far as Portuguese programs. There are 60 community schools, and those are schools that are either associated with a Portuguese hall or a club, or it's a local effort. There's 17 private schools, 6 elementary schools, 8 middle schools, 30 high schools, and 49 colleges or universities that offer some sort of Portuguese program. And I will say that in the elementary, middle, and high school level, that's also like if it's just a Portuguese club, right? There may not be a language course, but there's a club. So, which is a good start, but we're still not teaching the Portuguese language to the extent that we could. So that's kind of a level set of where we're starting from. Oh, did I? Yeah, no, okay. So to talk about some of the work that they have done, we have Linette da Rosa, who got up very early on the West Coast. She's joining us from San Diego. So thank you, Linette. She has been a community leader in San Diego for many, many years. And she'll give you a little bit of her bio. We have Mia Correia, who is the Curriculum Data and Assessment Manager for World Languages at New Bedford Public Schools. And we have Leslie Vicente, who's the Executive Director of the Discovery Language Academy in New Bedford, Massachusetts. So with that, yes. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to have Linette go first. And she's just going to talk about the effort that went into getting Portuguese offered at one of the local, it was a high school, right? Point Loma High School, from scratch. So there was no program and then the community banded together and they made it happen. So Linette, how did you do that? Oh, hold on. You got to unmute.
Sorry about that. Actually, it wasn't the community. Probably, I had figured this out. Probably about 11 years ago, a group from Northern California came down to San Diego and met at the Portuguese Historical Center. I wasn't there. And asked them to see if they could perhaps look into providing at the high school Portuguese as a world language. So at that time, one of the directors was Zeca Rodriguez, who's another real leader in our community. And I wasn't there. So they knew that I was involved in the schools. I had just retired, I believe. And so so we got together and I met Zeka, who now has been a long life friend who she and I have had numerous projects together dealing with the Portuguese community. But anyway, so we started looking and I approached the district and of course, they start with, it's the budget. And so we met with the principal of that time that then became a different principal the second year. Then we had to kind of start all over. And during this time, we were really fortunate because, well, I reached out to Denise Borges in California, who I knew had knowledge of the high schools already in California that were offering Portuguese. That was very helpful. Also, somehow we were able to get somebody, and she may be from New Bedford or Fall River, and her name was Odette Amarelo. And she came in and she really turned my thinking on my head about this because at the time when they asked us to do this, I said, I don't know that we have enough kids to provide this at Point Loma High School. And she said to us, it's not for the Portuguese kids. And it took me a bit to think about that. It's not for the Portuguese kids. And that's where then I think we became smarter about the marketing of the Portuguese program, which is really obvious. Why shouldn't people speak Portuguese? So from there, that's when we really started marketing. We would go to, at that time, to the middle and the high school at lunchtime to meet with kids. We surveyed the community. We, continue to talk to the school district who have put a few roadblocks like, oh, you have to come up with a study guide. And that's why it was really important to talk to Denise. And I was able to talk to some of the high school people in California and pull that together. So 2 to 3 years, 3 to 4 years. But the fourth year, we finally got it going. As far as a teacher, did you want me to talk about that now or just what?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, of course, the issue will become, finding the teacher. So we really could not be involved in that. And because it's a district process, very much they oversee it by the teachers union. And I knew that, of course, working as an administrator. So, and also there might have been a conflict of interest because I had relatives that might be applying. So anyway, they picked the teacher. It was a great choice. But this teacher did not have the right credentials in terms of language. The teacher was a math teacher. So he agreed. His name is Zé Garcia, actually a cousin, and a cousin, I believe, of Leslie's too. And so he was very much willing, because of his interest, and he spoke very good Portuguese, to take the language classes, to have the right, units. He had to work with Duarte Pinheiro, who represents Camões here in I guess on the West Coast, and to take the test. And anyway, so he finally got qualified. He's very popular. So right now at the school, we have just about 100 students. I think it's 99. And we have levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5, 6, with 5, 6 being a 5, 6 and a 7, 8. So if anybody's out there and is interested in San Diego, he very much would like to have a colleague to work with him, especially at the higher level. So if there are any teachers out there interested in San Diego, it's a nice place to live. And so I highly recommend that you can contact Angela, and she'll let me know, and we'll go from there.
Great. Thank you so much, Linette. And we'll have some discussions. So if you have questions for Linette, you can type them in the chat, but we'll get to questions. And you did mention Duarte Pinheiro, and I did want to mention that what we're talking about here is in addition to what can we do in addition to what Instituto Camões already does, right? So Instituto Camões is already working on different schools and trying to get programs established at different schools, but they have limited resources. So, and there's no way that they would be able to do all of the schools across the country. So that's why we're trying to supplement their efforts here with this grassroots effort and this plan, right? So it's not to replace what they're doing or say what they're doing is not good, because it absolutely is. And we actually get a lot of resources from them when it comes to books and curriculum and support, things like that. We're talking about what we can do in addition to what they're doing, right?
And
so
let me say, I'd like to say one more thing as well.
Sure.
One more thing. At that time, too, the school district said to us, well, we need to know that your community is supporting this program at the high school. And I knew definitely they were going to. And so they said, so can you come up with half the money? Well, half the money was one period at that time. So, we just sent out letters and we got back $30,000.
Wow.
And that was like in probably by maybe 2013 or so, or maybe 2014. It doesn't matter. Anyway, we approached FLAUD at that time too. FLAUD did not help us. And I'm going to say that because what they said to us, Mr. Rato at the time said to me was, well, let's see what the community can do first. So later on, I believe they did help, but at the time they really wanted to see that the community was behind them.
Yeah. And it's a good point, right? So thank you very much, Linette. So Mia, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hello. I'm going to share my screen. So my name is Mia Correia. I'm the K-12 Curriculum Data Assessment Manager for World Languages at New Bedford Public Schools, as well as an adjunct professor at Boston University Wheelock School of Education. So I want to talk about the two different districts that I've been in. I'll start off by where I currently am, New Bedford Public Schools, and how we grew our Portuguese program. When I started year one, we had 2 out of our 18 elementary schools had Spanish for grades K to 5. 3 of our our 3 middle schools had Spanish, and our high school had Portuguese and Spanish. And 1 of our elementary schools was a dual language Spanish school. And day one on the job, I asked, why do we have Spanish, 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 and we don't have Portuguese at the K to 8 level to be able to sustain our Portuguese program at the high school? So year 2, we were able to implement that, and I'll get a little bit more into how that happened. Let me go into here, what I had to do to make that happen. So I had to advocate for it. I made, I've done research over the years. I made a vision, a plan, what the curriculum would look like, what the outcomes would look like as a result of adding Portuguese. And I brought this to the building principals at one of the elementary schools that we had Spanish in, and I brought it to the 3 middle school principals. So we had 3 world language positions at each middle school. They were all Spanish. And so I made a plan with the principals. They agreed that we did need to implement Portuguese in the K to 8 level for our program at the high school to be able to be sustained. So year 2, we were able to go in and we replaced 1 position in each middle school of Spanish to Portuguese. So there was no really budget changes. The only really big budget change was being able to purchase a curriculum for Portuguese or curriculum resources. And then we replaced one of our elementary schools that had Spanish. We replaced it for Portuguese. So again, no big budget changes, just curriculum resources. So then for staffing, how did I staff these new positions? I leveraged Portuguese speaking paraprofessionals. So we had a few different paraprofessionals and ESL teachers who were actually Portuguese teachers in either Brazil or Portugal or other community schools. So we leveraged those teachers, and they were excited for the new opportunity of having these new positions in the middle and elementary schools. And then in year 3, which is this year, there was some restructuring done to our middle schools as far as specials go. And we added world languages to 15 out of our 17 elementary schools. So the reason why we have 17 elementary schools instead of 18 now is because 1 is now solely pre-K. But 11 of our elementary schools now offer Portuguese. And the way that we were able to do this was that it's not ideal, but students have it for half the year. So teachers are traveling. We have 2 Portuguese teachers that are traveling between schools. So they stay at a school, say 2 days, and then the next 2 days they're at another school, and the next 2 days they're at another school. We run on a 6-day rotation. And then halfway through the year, they go to another other schools. So in total, those 2 teachers in the elementary level, they service 11 different elementary schools in the Bedford Public Schools. And then one of our middle schools this year switched to half Portuguese, half Spanish. So we have 1 full-time Spanish teacher, 1 full-time Portuguese teacher, and then one of the teachers teaches both Portuguese and Spanish. And this year, what we've done, so, I included Spain here as for our program for our Spanish teachers, we do the Teachers from Spain program, which is similar to the visiting teachers from Portugal. I know Dr. João Caixinha handles the visiting teachers from Portugal, but it's all connected with our DESE program, our Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And we have a lot of teachers from Spain in our district. Some teach Spanish, some teach other languages. And this year, our teacher at one of our middle schools is coming from Mozambique.
That's cool.
So some of the challenges that we faced implementing this, but currently face also is the teacher pipeline. A big part of this is our requirements that we have in Massachusetts to become a teacher, specifically to become a language teacher. So at the 5 through 12 level, you need to be able to pass the MTEL in the world language, so the Portuguese MTEL, as well as communication and literacy. So many times our people whose first language is not English struggle with the communication and literacy. And I don't think that this is a huge important requirement for the job, because we want our Portuguese teachers to be native speakers of Portuguese, because they should be 90% or more of the time speaking in the target language. So I think that that's a little bit of a barrier. If you want somebody that's completely knowledgeable and proficient in the target language, we need to rethink what that looks like. Is it really essential for them to have that communication and literacy piece that they're so struggling to be able to attain? But unfortunately, it is written into legislation, so that becomes a barrier when we're looking at the teacher pipeline. And then just having pedagogy knowledge, right? Like, just because you know how to speak Portuguese doesn't mean that you know how to teach Portuguese. It doesn't mean you know how to be a teacher. So we have a lot of times career changers come into the teaching profession, and you need to be able to know how to work with kids, right? How to teach kids. So this becomes an issue when we're looking at the teacher pipeline. And then curriculum and resources was also a little bit of a challenge and continues to be. In Massachusetts, we rewrote our frameworks in 2021. And with that, DESE does not want us to go by a textbook. Like, we're not teaching by the textbook. We're teaching by a homegrown curriculum that fits our community, our school community, our local community. And so in order to do this, you need a lot of time and manpower to do it. And it takes years to be able to develop a high quality curriculum. We do use Escola Virtual for curriculum resources, but it just takes a lot of time to be able to put a well thought out curriculum and units together. So one thing I would say is, so I wanted to actually go back and talk about in my former district. When I joined my former district, we were a 5 through 12 school. I taught high school Portuguese. I was the first Portuguese teacher there. From day one, I was advocating to expand it to the middle school. And the administration said, yeah, that's great, but we don't have time for it. Like, there's so many important things for students to learn, but we just don't have enough time in the day. So that inspired me to go for my doctorate. And I did so much research around language learning and like the benefits of it, the importance of it, and how we would be able to overcome the challenges of scheduling, of staffing, to be able to implement this. And finally, I think it was like 4 or 5 years later, my school finally agreed to expand the program. We were supposed to hire a teacher from Portugal. Her visa got denied last minute. The program wasn't going to run, and this was like a week before school starting. So I offered to teach an extra class. So I was teaching 5 high school classes. I offered to teach a middle school class so that we would be able to at least like kick off the program with 5th grade and then worry about finding somebody for the following year. Okay, so community support, just make sure I'm always networking, I'm always connecting with the community. Leslie and I work a lot together. Make sure you're engaging the stakeholders, Portuguese-owned establishments, libraries, local colleges and universities, the true stakeholders, the students and the parents, and just all Portuguese-speaking members in the community in general. So a little bit of the advocacy piece. I really use the Massachusetts State Seal of Biliteracy as my selling point. If you don't know what this is, all 50 states now have the State Seal of Biliteracy. It's called the State Seal of Biliteracy because every state has different requirements. In Massachusetts, you need to be at an intermediate high level of proficiency on the ACT Full Proficiency Scale in that world language as well as in English. So you have to pass the English, the ELA MCAS, and pass the world language component. And this doesn't have to be a language that is offered in the school. We've tested in 11 different languages, and a lot of students have received the Seal of Biliteracy in all 11 different languages. So in order to get to the intermediate high level of proficiency, it takes 6 to 8 years of learning the language full-time. So right now, a lot of programs that do exist in elementary and middle school, including New Bedford Public Schools, doesn't have languages every day. It's once every 3 days, once a week. But in order to reach the Seal of Biliteracy, you need 6 to 8 years of full-time learning to get that. And you graduate high school with a Seal of Biliteracy that gives you college credits. A lot of colleges are offering 12 to 15 credits. You get to put this on your resume to show that you know how to read, write, speak, and listen in more than one language. And really emphasizing the other importance, right? Career and college readiness, being able to interact with a higher population of speakers around the world. There is a lot of cognitive benefits backed up by research. And then also it's connecting, people with the community, whether it's, local community or global community. So finally, I get into just kind of like a little bit of vague steps on what you can do to advocate for your program is really do the research. This is really what set the fire on me being able to do, to build the programs that I was able to build. I did my research. You need to let data tell the story because, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. You need to create a clear vision and a plan, including staffing, budget, curriculum, a scope and sequence for the program. And you need to have that end goal in mind. What is your end goal? What do you want students to be able to do by the end of the program based on, as a result of your implementation? So for me, it's more students will be able to graduate with a Seal of Biliteracy. And then present this plan to your stakeholders, to your admin, to your school committee. And again, just emphasizing the Seal of Biliteracy as one of the selling points. And that's it.
That was great. It seems like you have a lot of materials that I think we could use to put in a toolkit, right? So that would be great. So thank you so much. Leslie, you're up.
Hello, good morning, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, I'm sure there's a lot of them out there. My name is Leslie Vicente. I have a PhD in Education Leadership and Public Policy. And I run Discovery Language Academy, which is a community school in New Bedford. It is not like Mia's. Mia has a district to worry about, and I don't. but I do work very closely with Mia. Mia's daughters actually go to the school, so I get to see her once in a while when she's not running around, being very, very busy. So my case is a little different because the school is a community school. I didn't have to advocate for the school, it was already there, but it was about to close. So I had to also, in a way, I had to rebuild from not the bottom, but pretty close to the bottom because I had to revamp everything. Because when you have an organization that once upon a time had 300 students and it's down to 40, basically it is, it is closing house. How do we build the school again to not, you can't build it to what it was once upon a time because times change, things change. So you have to come up with a new concept, including the building and including the name, right? Because Portuguese United for Education just didn't fit the times at the time. So the reason, the way it started was there was a Portuguese school here in New Bedford that became an official Portuguese, actually a nonprofit in 1979. But before that, the school is almost 80 years old. It was a school that first started, I believe, for English, for the immigrants that were coming here to learn English. But then there was a huge, huge wave of immigrants in the 1980s, especially because of the fishing industry in New Bedford. And a lot of those students, a lot of the students coming here were the sons and the daughters of the fishermen, and even people working in factories due to that wave of immigration and other jobs, not just that. So you had all these preteens, teens, and the parents, obviously rightfully so, they didn't want them to forget their Portuguese. So they opened the Portuguese school, which is Portuguese United for Education. And the school at that time had about 300 students. It was significant school. So obviously those students, went to the school, graduated. At that time, you took a test. They went up to ninth grade. It still does. They were taking a test that was equivalent to the ninth grade in Portugal. So if they ever went back, they would have their, I guess we would be their high school diploma. So they would just go to the university. But that ended, the 1990s came, the 2000s came, those kids, grew up, got married, didn't put their kids back in school. So the school was really closing down. It was also in a very, very old building that was not proper, or even the location for children to attend. So when I was asked to help out the school at the time, I think I just finished my master's degree. I was going into my doctoral degree, and I didn't have the time. I said, I really can't head the school, but I'll stop by, and I'll see what's going on. Why do we have 40 students? So that's basically the way it happened. I started doing surveys. Why are there children that they're starting school, for example, first grade in September is starting school with 23 students, and by November there's 13. There's something going on, because your first grade is your very important. They're all important, but that's your first grade that's going to carry to second, third, fourth, and eventually graduate ninth grade. And there was a few things going on. One of them, and this is things that change with the time. So the school, the teachers, this is due to professional development, like Mia was referring to a little while ago. You have to have professional development. You can't just give teachers a set of books and say, go out there and teach Portuguese. It doesn't work that way. The kids are different. The technology is different. The pedagogy changes. Everything changes. So I went to observe a couple of classrooms, and basically you have a few, 6-year-olds that don't speak Portuguese because the parents don't speak Portuguese with them. The parents might speak Portuguese, but they don't speak Portuguese with the kids at home. And then you have, staff teaching kids in Portuguese, go to the board, but they tell them the Portuguese, vai ao quadro. The kids looking at them like, what? Then when you're on the board and you're giving them instructions in Portuguese. These kids don't know how to speak Portuguese, so they got scared, and the only way that I could find to get the point across was we had a meeting once, and I just spoke in English, and they're all looking at me because a lot of these teachers also their English wasn't fluent. So I spoke in English, and I could see their faces, and I said, is that uncomfortable? And they're like, yeah, that's very uncomfortable. But that's how the kids feel when you're talking to them just in Portuguese. You can't do that. You can do that 5th grade, 6th grade, 8th grade, or you can mix it. I said, what if we do bilingual education? Like, what do you mean? I said, you guys know enough English that we can do a bilingual, like repeat. I'd rather you repeat everything in 2 languages, and the class, the class is not going to go as quick as it's supposed to, but the kids are going to, to learn a little bit more. So the ideology itself had to change. The teachers that only spoke Portuguese had to be moved up to 8th and 9th grade. The teachers that were bilingual had to come down to teach 1st grade. You can't have a teacher that only speaks Portuguese teach 5-year-olds and just use that. She has to be able to use both. And that's basically how it started. Then I added kindergarten, which was very, very kindergarten age kids, which was pretty successful. And then we added the preschool age kids. The 4-year-old is probably our 1st grade is always our biggest class, but the kindergarten and the preschool are as well. So, and then came the idea. We had Mr. James DeMello, who was, he's an advocate for Portuguese education here in the area. And he bought a building downtown, a beautiful building where we are now. And we moved down to what is now the Mello International Center. It's a beautiful building, excellent security. So that helped a lot, because a lot of parents also didn't want to send their students to that school because the 1st floor, there was issues with great people on the 1st floor, but it was also a clinic, and that's not where they wanted to go. And so that being downtown, having a great parking lot, having a beautiful building, and we decorated the school so it was more like a home instead of a school. The classrooms all have a color. We painted the classrooms. We have flags. And then we had to work on technology. So I got this. Then the community started to, because the community to me had given up on the Portuguese school. It was just, And then I said, we can't call it Portuguese United for Education. Just like if we went to a school that had a name, French for All, we probably wouldn't sign up. You have to think out of the box, and you have to think of a name that's going to attract everyone and say, I belong. So I proposed Discovery Language Academy. I said, Discovery fits us all because we did discover, language is what we do. And an academy, because we're an academy. We're really not, a public school or, more of a nonprofit organization. Took a while, I would say a good 6 months, but then we finally had a board meeting and they agreed to it. So then we switched to Discovery Language Academy. We also switched a little bit of the mentality where the Portuguese school was just for certain Portuguese kids from certain areas. The Portuguese school is for everybody. It doesn't matter where you're from. Everybody can learn Portuguese. I mean, we have kids there learning the Portuguese as a 3rd language, which is really, really important. And then it just started growing. We had a little space on the 3rd floor, but there was a big space across the hall, and I knew it was available. And then I started saying, I want that space. And Mr. Melly said, no, you can't have it. You're not that big. And then we had partitions, and before partitions don't work when you teach your 2nd language. And then he said, okay, you can go across. But we went from 41 to 78, still in the Portuguese United for Education. And then we started growing like 110, 168. It was little by little. It wasn't every year our enrollment would grow. We added the Portuguese, conversational Portuguese for adults, which this year is our biggest class. We have 24 students, and it's online. Even though most of the students are from the area, a lot of them, we had to adjust to people's schedules too. So a lot of students, the adult students, they work and they're rushing around. So, they can start the class in their car and then finish it when they get home. They even maybe can start at work. So we have 24. I mean, we have students from California, we have students from Arizona, we have students from Florida, but we have 24 students, but it's all done on teams. And this is how the school started. And then I didn't have immediate community support because it was a school that was already there. It wasn't like I was starting a new program. And like I said, a lot of people had given up on the Portuguese school because it was, Portuguese Night for Education. Even when they asked me, I'm like, what? That school's still open? That was my, and I was Portuguese. I was like, really? That's still open? Because I had been asked before, and then like that, it wasn't at the time. I just wasn't interested. It's not where I wanted to go. But that's where I ended up. And I'm glad I did. But then I think people started seeing results. And one of the things is they come to us twice a week for 2 hours each, or it's 4 hours per week. There is a tuition involved. I mean, I think at the time it was $40. Now it's $60. So in 15 years, we've raised that tuition $20 per month. So that's pretty good. That's why we do a lot of fundraising. But the kids, a lot of times I hear the parents say, oh, they don't speak Portuguese. They're not learning anything. They don't know anything. They're really not. They are. But for some reason, kids this year do not like to speak Portuguese in front of the parents. And the proof is, like they said, proof is in the pudding. It's when they graduate. Even last year and 2 years ago, they all have to speak in Portuguese. When they could get up there to the podium and they have their graduation speech and the parents come up to me, she go, oh my God, I didn't know they could speak Portuguese like that. I'm like, what do you think they've been doing here for 9 years? It's just the kids, they know, they have this thing that they don't want to speak it in front of their parents. But at school, like 5th grade and up, there's no English. They have to answer in Portuguese, and they know, even if they try to answer back. And if it's something they don't really know, the teacher will help them. But once they leave the school, that door, their Portuguese is left behind, and they immediately start talking to the parents in English. And there's only so much we can do. We have a lot of alumni too that tell us that they didn't want to come to Portuguese school. They said, we don't want to go. But the parents goes, yeah, you are going. They forced them to go, and now they say that they're glad they did. And that's how the Discovery Language Academy started. And then when the community saw that it was taken off, I do have a lot of help. WJFD, which is one of your recipient from this year, they were always behind us from day one. From day one, whatever I wanted, Pauline and Henry said, Henry, what do you need? And they were always there supporting us. Portuguese Times as well. The Portuguese media, journal and everything, always very, very supportive because they believed in us, and they knew that was needed. And they're very huge promoters of our Portuguese language and culture, just like Mia. Mia, I'll tell you a story about Mia, and then I'll give somebody else a chance. When I left teaching, I was teaching at Diocese of Fall River, a couple of Catholic schools, which was the first Catholic schools to start Portuguese, because everybody was into Spanish at the time. And then I left because I went back to school, and Mia took over my job. But Mia didn't have any books, but I was already at the Portuguese school. So Mia and I, hopefully nobody from Camões is listening, that's okay, it doesn't matter. Mia and I met in a parking lot of a church, and she opened the trunk of her van. I think I opened the trunk of my van. I'm giving her books, like, use this one for this grade, use this one for this grade. So just picture these two crazy women in the back of a parking lot exchanging Portuguese books so that the students could learn the Portuguese language. Like, this is a crazy, we're trying to promote our language. So we're meeting, like we're doing some kind of a crazy deal in a church parking lot, but it's not, it's just books. I remember a salpicos. I remember that, giving her a big salpicos book and some guguinhas from my stock at the school. So that was my, because to me, a lot of people see the public schools as competition. I don't see that. Our organization is different. Our organization is there 4 hours a week. I think the public schools are doing a great job. I've always worked with her. I think it should be in every school, Portuguese. and it's a supplement, that language. Our school is a little bit different because we have a lot of students like Mia's daughters. They do both because they're not going to be fluent attending the New Bedford Public Schools, but they're going to get the roots of it. They're going to start to understand the elements of the language. But then coming to our school, that's a little bit more strict, has a different curriculum, then that's where they're going to start really, really emerging into the language. But both of them are very, very important. That's my story.
That's great. Thank you so much, Leslie. I love the black market story. Exchanging Portuguese books on the black market. I love it. So now we open it up for questions, both online and here in the room. If you have questions, if you have observations, if you have your own example that you would like to share, we would love to hear from you. So let me just check to see. Yes, we have some questions here. Let's see. Okay. Oops. Hi. So this is from Deb Monteiro. She's a career counselor at Milford High. She's leaving a comment. We had a Portuguese language program at Milford High School for over 20 years, but since our longstanding teacher retired, it has been very difficult to find qualified Portuguese teachers. We have a large Portuguese community and now a growing Brazilian community, and with Portuguese being one of the most spoken languages in the world, it's alarming, especially here in Massachusetts, that we're struggling so much to find candidates. Her question is, what efforts are being made and it can be made at the post-secondary level to promote Portuguese language education and strengthen the teacher pipeline? Thankfully, the teacher consular program has kept our program alive by allowing us to hire teachers from Portugal, but I understand that this program is undergoing changes under the current administration, which could threaten us. So I don't know if Leslie or Mia know anything about that, or we want to address.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to say that this starts with the high school Portuguese teachers. Be an inspiration. Encourage your students to pursue that route to become a Portuguese teacher. Give them the resources to be able to do that and show them the importance of that. A lot of times students become language teachers because they were inspired by their language teacher. So that's where it starts. Go ahead, Linette.
I was just going to say also to have a strong link to the university, because at San Diego State University, actually the dean and the chair of the Portuguese and Spanish language program at the school is Portuguese from the mainland, and so he supports Point Loma High School quite a bit. He teaches classes and encourages his Portuguese speaking students to go pursue after they graduate to get their credentials. So having that too is important, I believe.
Mm-hmm. I can add, it's not easy. And what's happening now is we are seeing less and less Portuguese teachers, not because there's less Portuguese teachers, because they're starting to teach ESL. They're turning into ESL teachers. What I do, and I've been very guilty of it, is I try to look. So there's a lot of Portuguese teachers from Portugal that have here, and they're right now, they might be working at a supermarket, but they were teachers. They're certified teachers. And so all my teachers are qualified. They're all certified or they're going through certification. You're going to run into the risk like I did, where we provide them PDs, we provide them free MTELs, and then they get certified and then they leave you and go to public schools. That's happened to us 3 times, but that's okay. That's not, we can't live in that fear. We have to make sure that we have the best teachers we can have, but we have to, like what Mia said, that's a great idea, is you have these students that's where you start, and especially not just on Mia's level in the high school, Portuguese programs in colleges, in education departments, that should be doing that. They should be encouraging, there should be more courses, not only in the Portuguese departments, but in the education departments of universities, to train teachers to be Portuguese teachers. So they need to start doing that. It's not just us on this level. The high schools also, the universities also need to have a program that's really going to just train certain teachers to teach Portuguese. That's very, very important because they're all moving over to ESL.
So that's when I steal them back from ESL, because that's where I get a lot of my teachers from. But I do have to say too, like, again, to bring up the state seal of biliteracy, in Massachusetts, when you get the seal of biliteracy, DESE gives you a voucher to take the MTEL, the teacher test. And so I think this is an effort to try to build a teacher pipeline for language teachers, because if you think about it, if you're graduating with a seal of biliteracy, you get a lot of college credits in world languages. So say you go to a university that offers 15 credits, that's a whole semester of a language. So you can minor or major in that language. And then with that free voucher for the MTEL, you can try it out. That might inspire somebody to take that route to go into language teaching.
We have a comment here from one of our Zoom attendees, Danilo Diaz. He says, we are based in Virginia, Great Falls, and they're happy to help in any effort to promote Portugal and Portuguese language around. We have an immigration company that already approved 55,000 green cards. So this may be a way to kind of help with getting Portuguese teachers approved for visas to come and teach. So we'll be sharing his information and hopefully he can help. Mia, you mentioned that it's really important for Portuguese teachers to be able to I guess either be native speakers or be very fluent in Portuguese, but there's an effort in California. So we don't have a lot of native or teachers, like Portuguese teachers who are working at the grocery store, as you said, Leslie. So we're kind of in a different situation.
Yeah.
And so there's an effort to try and get Spanish teachers certified to teach Portuguese for a couple of reasons. One, if they're already teaching Spanish in a school, then there's not a lot of increased budget resources that the school will have to cover, right? And then for the teacher, there's a benefit for them because then they do get a little bit of extra pay because now they're teaching another class. I wonder what your thoughts are on that, if you think that that's a viable solution as one option, right? Obviously, there's the preferred, where we would get teachers from Portugal, but in situations where that is not possible, do you think this is a good solution, or what would be some other solutions to find Portuguese teachers? Because for us, even for community schools, that's the biggest issue. I mean, we have at least 3 halls that I can think of that have said we would love to start a Portuguese program, even small, for like 10 kids, but they can't find anybody to teach it.
No, I agree. That's definitely a solution. It's like the situation we have at one of our middle schools. We wanted to split the 3 teachers between Spanish and Portuguese. And so the way we did that was to have one teacher teach both Portuguese and Spanish. They're a native Spanish speaker, but they've learned Portuguese, which I think just like having that foundation of that second language already, or having that as your native language, Spanish, and being able to teach Portuguese is a lot easier than, somebody who might have just studied Portuguese for a few years. And I'm not totally against like people who learn to speak Portuguese teaching Portuguese, but I think that the teachers need to reflect the community. So if you have a huge community of Portuguese, either from the Azores, the mainland, Brazil, then the teacher kind of needs to have that culture embedded within themselves, so students can see themselves as relevant to that teacher.
Yeah, it's a great point. We do have just a quick question for you here, Mia, would you be able to share the curricular resources that your district uses? And PALCUS is actually going to put together like a Google Drive of resources, and maybe eventually it can be on our website, but where we can put all of these things, right? So no one's recreating the wheel. So Mia, if you're able to, whatever you're able to share, we can put it there and then people can access it.
Yeah, of course. But just as a little side note, is that we mainly use Escola Virtual to pull our resources. So there's lots of lessons, videos, textbooks. We do purchase that for our teachers in the district. And then we build our own curriculum. So our scope and sequence was fully built by our K-12 team. We put together a curriculum writing team, and our scope and sequence was built by us. We also had some ideas and input from a curriculum writing team that we partnered with Leslie's school. We partnered with Fall River Public Schools, Taunton Public Schools, and a charter school as well. But in a nutshell, we use eScholar as well for a lot of the resources.
Okay. Are there any questions here in the room or comments? No, not so far. So we do have a question here from Gilda Betancourt. What would be the most helpful thing that someone who is not an educator can do to promote the study of Portuguese? Anybody want to take that?
I mean, welcome.
Someone who is not an educator.
So
Linette?
I would say
Many
start
ways.
community groups. So our Portuguese library in New Bedford, they started a Saturday group where they would get together on Zoom and they would talk about different books that they were reading. But everybody was reading different books. It was just the point of being able to get together and conversate in Portuguese. And then someone from our community recently started also another conversation community group. They got together at one of our cafes in New Bedford. I know they're planning on going to East Providence and other towns and cities around us to be able to just encourage people who actually are just learning Portuguese to be comfortable and be able to speak it, to practice and to make those mistakes and be in that safe space. So, start a group around the city.
Well, currently, given I think the situation in the United States, lots of people are interested in getting their dual citizenship. So there's been this real increased interest because depending on how you're going to get it, do you have to be taking a class in Portuguese or learn how to speak the language? So there's this real interest. We have people here in San Diego who are very capable and are teaching Portuguese to these people. And even socially online, you see lots of classes now offered that people can take to speak Portuguese. But these are adults. But I think that's really pushed that interest of learning to speak the language as well.
Right. I think too that like that was really important what Mia said that just came up when about local Portuguese descendants. Her mom actually, the girl that started, her mom has written a book. And even if you start a book club, it doesn't have to be you don't have to be Lusíadas. You can start with a small, easy Portuguese book. My goodness, our library at the school has so many that FLAD has offered us. That you can start with basics and meet. And I know everybody's so busy, nobody has time to meet in person, which is sad because you can take an hour or 2 hours and just meet with a group of people at a local cafe, even if it's I don't think you guys have Dunkin' Donuts up there. You have something else, right? Jack in the Box is your McDonald's. Something like that. Yeah, Starbucks. Okay. Yeah, something like that. For example, in our school during COVID, we had so many people from your area that wanted to join. So we have a lot of online classes. And Linette, you are right. Right now, one of our biggest classes, but we do it one-on-one, is the Portuguese citizenship, especially because now you can get your citizenship not only through your parents, but through your grandparents. So we have folks that are 70, 80 years old wanting to get their citizenship. It's not easy for someone that age to learn the level of A2 Portuguese. So we do one-on-one. It is one-on-one, but I think we've had 25 students, only one has had to repeat the test. So we're doing okay. But there is a lot of option, like, Angela was saying, you have all these people that want to start classes. But what I do notice that there's so much interest in classes, but then when you start the classes, I created a class very late on a Wednesday night for kids from out of state, such as in California, because I figured, they need a 4-hour gap. Then they don't join the class. So the parents have to also commit. Your parents can't say, I want my kids to learn Portuguese and then not show up. There has to be really, really important. This is not up to the children. There has to be a parent commitment. And parents have to really once again, and I'm a mom too. I'm a mom of 4, well, not kids anymore. So I was a teacher for many, many years, a mom as well. But I was a what they call a mãe galinha, that's all over the kids, and into too much. I should have given them more freedom. A little Portuguese mother that's always sticking her nose in everything. But I see a lot of parents. I'm not going to make friends here today. I know that. You need to connect you with your kids. You need to stop giving your kids iPads and iPhones to shut them up. Take them to school, to have them do something else. Oh my God, I can't deal with him anymore. Here's an iPad. I see that so much. Don't do that. Like the Portuguese schools, your kid's going to learn a second language. We're cheaper than babysitting, and you won't be sorry. I mean, they're going to give you a hard time, but remember, you're the parent, they're the kids.
Just on that quick note, I know, Linette, you want to say something, but I will say I totally agree, Leslie, because so there's no Portuguese school where we live, but we have a one-on-one online tutor that our daughter takes a class once a week, and she asked me, how long do I have to take this class? I really don't like it. And I said, till you're 18. So suck it up and you're going to do it. So I no choice on this one. We can quit soccer, we can quit whatever else you want, but you are not quitting your Portuguese class. So Linette, we'll have a comment from you. And then there's a comment here online that's all in Portuguese, and Catherine's going to read it, so I don't embarrass myself.
Okay, real quick. I just wanted to say, going back to the marketing, you have to, San Diego has a small community. It's not like the East Coast, but we look at where do we have the most Portuguese and get the biggest bang for our buck. And so when I think about the Portuguese Festa, the Espírito Santo, where we have a lot of kids in the procession, nowadays it's by email. So a lot of that can be, advertised through that. But the other thing to consider, and this is happening now in San Diego, which at first, again, was a little shocking to me. We have a folkloric group that through the years has been very popular, but now we have kids that are not Portuguese in that folkloric group, and they love it. So I think we have to also not just limit ourselves to our community, but go beyond that too. Even in our Philharmonic, we have people who are not Portuguese in our Philharmonic. And I think that, spreading the wealth, I think Portugal is all about that. They really want to spread the language, whether it's enhancing the diaspora, the people that are here, or if it's bringing in people who are not even Portuguese.
I agree. So we're going to have Catherine read this comment, and then Conceição, I know you've had your hand up for a while, then we'll have you ask your question.
Hey, everybody. So this comment is basically, it's from Enough in Philadelphia, and it's applauding the efforts and a little bit of description of difficulties in the Philadelphia area. Olá, bom dia. Eu só quero dizer muito obrigada a todas as professoras de português aqui nos Estados Unidos e pelo trabalho que fazem. Na zona de Filadélfia, que eu tenha conhecimento, não existe uma escola e eu tive a dificuldade de ensinar o melhor que eu conseguia em casa com os livros que eu tinha da Escola João de Deus. A única ferramenta extra que eu tinha era a escola virtual e a partir do 6º ano tornou-se difícil. Por isso dou muito valor a todo o vosso trabalho.
So just to translate,
yes,
she was saying that it's a virtual school?
No, so what she was saying was that to the best of her knowledge, there are no Portuguese schools in the Philadelphia area, and that she had some trouble, but that she did the best that she could with some books that she had from, I guess, an existing community school called João de Deus, and then the only extra tool that she had at her disposal was Escola Virtual, and she said that after the 6th grade of, I'm not sure if she means of American public schooling or a 6th grade of Portuguese community school language education, that it became more difficult, but that she very much values all of the work that the teachers do in the United States to teach everyone the Portuguese language.
Okay. Thank you.
That's wonderful, actually, Angela. That's really good to hear that she tried. That's amazing. We actually had some students from Philadelphia, but there are options out there. I mean, I don't know what she's looking for, but that grade level, which is the higher grade level, we have a class on Saturday for an hour. I know it's not that much, from 1:30 to 2:30. That's 5th grade, and not 5th grade meaning o nível 5, so it's A2, C1, B1, our classes. So Escola Virtual is the same thing that Mia was talking about, which is provided by Portuguese. It's amazing. We have both. We have the books when we that's another issue is the books. So right now we haven't received our books. Instituto Camões is amazing. They still support us with books. However, our books were purchased in August and they're still sitting in a warehouse in Lisbon. And here we are in October and our kids have no books, you know. That's kind of very does not help, you know, our mission to teaching these kids because we're using older books, using books that have been used. And then when they get here in December, then we can only use them for 6 months. So we can't cover all the units. So that's usually a problem, which makes no sense because the books were ordered and paid for, I think, back in August. But we appreciate, I guess, everything we can get. We just wish that for 1 year, if this has been going on for 15 years, we would get them in September. So we could have the books on their desks when they walk in. But there is options for anybody. So we do have, you know, it's not in person because some kids don't do well with virtually, you know. And one thing that we did start this year is every class has a link. So first grade, second grade, all the way to 9th grade, we created a Teams link. So any student, our classes are at 5. So sometimes it's difficult because in California, it's probably 1 o'clock in the afternoon and the kids are in school. So, but every class has a link. So any student from anywhere can join any of our classes. So that's something that we started. We didn't exactly, you know, publicize it, but every classroom this year has its own Teams link. So anyone can just join the class and it goes all the way up to 9th grade. But kudos to that mom for doing that out of her house. I think that's amazing.
So you talked about books, and we do have a question here from Constance, who actually had her hand up. So Constance, if you want to put your hand up again and verbally ask your question, please do so. But the question here is, what textbooks do you use in your schools? And so do you have to use the books that are stuck in a warehouse in Lisbon, or can you use a different type of curriculum? You know, so what are the kinds of resources that you use?
In my case, so my curriculum is our own curriculum, and we're constantly trying to improve it. I don't use the Camões curriculum. I use the LA curriculum. What is the LA curriculum? It's a curriculum that we created. So we went to look at the Massachusetts standards, and they were ancient. They were not for today's kids. They might have been for me when I was, you know, in high school, and that was many, many years ago. And then the Camões was also great because it aligns with their books, but it's a little difficult for students our students. Maybe for our students 15 years ago, they were more fluent. So what we do is we combine them, but we rewrote it. And then we use a lot of the sources that we have for our curriculum. But we meet monthly. I have a team and I have a team leader that they meet monthly. They look at the lesson plans. Our lesson plans are all created according by age, obviously, and by level, and according to the books that they use. So when I start class in September, we're gonna, for example, kindergarten, there's a certain book that they're going to use because during the summer, we've relied on that book to use it. The curriculum is a set curriculum, but the lesson plans have been created according to that book. So when September comes and we don't have the book, we have a problem. We have to, you know, reinvent the wheel. And there's enough stresses already, you know, dealing with other things and having to worry about not having books. Because, you know, we can't make copies. You know, we just finished our accreditation process from the CEA to accredit our school. And that's one of the first things I did. And I had to post something on the printer. We cannot make copies of any books. We wouldn't do it anyways. So even if a student doesn't have a book, we can't make a copy for them. So that's a big no-no. So it's very, very stressful. And our teachers, believe it or not, and Mia probably tell you the same thing, we have enough stresses to deal with other issues than having to worry about not having the resources for our students. That's the least we could do, right? Is provide resources for them.
Great. There's a question here, Professor Cristiano Liborio. Is it possible to speak, or is it written questions only? So you just got to raise your hand on the Zoom, and then we can allow you to ask your question verbally. So that's how you would verbally ask a question. There's a couple of comments and questions here, saying that this is a great initiative. How can we help? I live in Colorado, or I'm in an area where there's not a lot of Portuguese. I would say, just from my own experience, and I would love to hear comments from others, both here in the room and online, that this might sound funny, but like start a Facebook group or an Instagram account, like Portuguese in Colorado, or WhatsApp or something. But I say Facebook or Instagram because I'll give my own personal example. We moved to a town called Livermore in California. It's in the Bay Area, but I really didn't know there was no Portuguese school or anything. And so I put out a request on one of the local groups saying, Facebook groups, hey, if we had a Portuguese festival here in Livermore, would you go? And I got so many people saying, not only would I go, I want to help you plan it because I'm Portuguese. And I had no idea we had this many Portuguese in Livermore. So now we have a Facebook group called the Livermore Portuguese Festival. I don't know when it's going to happen, but we have all these people that have come out of the woodwork and want to help plan it. So I think it's something as simple as that, where you might think, oh, there's no Portuguese where I live. There probably are. You just have to find them. And I would use Facebook. There's the Nextdoor app. There's Instagram. So there's other like public communities. And then once you get this group going, then WhatsApp is a good way to communicate. The other example I'll give is the new organization called Portuguese in Arizona. There was no Portuguese club in Arizona. There's no hall there, but there was one guy who wanted to start something, and he started a Facebook group, and they've had, I think, 3 events already, and he's, filed for a nonprofit status. And so it was one guy that had a vision and brought people together, and it was like, yeah, I'm Portuguese, I'm in Arizona. This is great. Let's get together. So I think just starting small like that, it doesn't have to, what's the saying? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So you just start small, and it can be something as simple as a Facebook group. So that would be my comment to a lot of the folks here who are asking, how can I support? What can I do? Any other comments or questions here from the room? Let's see. We do have. So here's one. What can be done to grow Portuguese language programs outside of the immediate Portuguese communities? I live in northern New Jersey, and I would travel 1 hour each way for years to bring my daughter to Portuguese school in Newark, which eventually became unsustainable as she got into high school. For example, we have Italian language programs in most of public and private high schools all over the state, including an established National Italian Honor Society. Can and how can Portuguese do the same? I don't know if anybody has a specific answer to that question, but it's kind of like what we've been talking about.
I think they can. I understand the parents' stress, but they would have to find somebody like Mia to start that at their local school. I don't know how big the Portuguese community is where they're at. So it is possible. Like Mia said, when we first, even when I went to Bedford Public Schools, it was Spanish and French, and there was some Portuguese, but it was a advanced Portuguese. How about Portuguese just for? And it was high school. There was nothing in middle school. There was nothing in elementary. So it's just a matter of someone creating a strong case. But I will let Mia take it. I think that's more for Mia.
I don't really have much to add to that, Leslie. I think, you said it well. It's like, you have to look at the population, right? So some of the work that I've been doing with DESE is really taking a look at different communities in Massachusetts and who their population is. And you need to build like heritage programs based on that. So in addition to our regular Portuguese classes at the high school, we also have Portuguese heritage classes, but that's because we have the community to do so. And so is there a need in your community for that? Could you start that? Is there somebody that that would lead that work, or something that you could do recreationally on, in your spare time too?
Okay. Conceição, do you have a question for Mia? You have to raise your hand again in order for me to unmute you, I think, over here. Oh, is it over here? Let me see. Sorry. No, that's Elsa Elsa, do you still have a question that you'd like to verbally ask? No. Okay. All right, next question. Again, oh, okay. Asked to unmute. Oh. Okay, go ahead, Elsa.
Hi, and thank you for hosting this. This is very helpful. I wish that I would have done more to to help my own kids with the language. But I have a PhD in political science, and I teach college and whatever. And I wonder if any of your organizations would need during the summer or something that I could do something even through Zoom, or that I could help with history, because I also have a field in history. So if there's anything that you could see that you would need some help with, to help the students understand beyond the language, maybe do something during the summer, I would be happy to help if there is a need for that kind of thing within teaching them about Portugal's political system, or in a very low level, but to try to help them understand the way. And I could do it in English or in Portuguese. I grew up in Lisbon. I go to Lisbon every summer. So just some ideas. If you would like that, please let me know.
Okay, so Elsa, thank you. I think, and I actually just did a video about culture. To me, culture is the anchor of our here in the United States, of our whole being of Portuguese. So we actually use culture to as an incentive for our kids. And I don't mean studying the history of Portugal, unfortunately. I mean, the traditions, the celebrations that we have, anywhere from as festas de São João to soccer to as festas São Joaninhas to Carnaval. We need to captivate the kids. But what you are proposing, I think, is amazing. So our school, Discovery Language Academy, does run a summer 6 weeks program that's called the Language and Cultural Program. We do have older students, so when we do it is also curriculum based, even though there's a lot of arts and crafts involved, and there's swimming classes involved, and there's field trips involved. So it's a very it's an amazing program, because we don't just have Portuguese kids. It's not just our kids. We open that up to anybody from the community that wants to come and learn about our culture. And FLAD is a big supporter of that program. And a lot of those kids do return in September and join our school. So we have them divided into different groups. So we have the little dinosaurs, which are 4 and 6, and the butterflies, they're 8. But then we do have the owls, which are older kids. So I think something like that would be, even if it's an hour a week, I think it would be appropriate for that. And if that's something you want to do, I could, put you in touch with the teacher that leads that group. And we do have technology. Every classroom has a smart board. Like I said, every classroom has a camera. Every kid has a Chromebook or Microsoft tablet. So I think that would be great, and I really appreciate it. And then you can reach out to me at the school. It's Discovery Language Academy, and then we can talk about it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Whatever I can do to help us.
That's what I do. Thank you, Elsa. Do we have questions here in the room? Yes, Emily. Do you want to come up and ask? Yeah, it's just so people can hear. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I can go on.
Yeah.
So you can see me. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. And that goes to the people in the room, both virtually and in person. My question is inspired by something Mia said, but I think that could relate to all of you and to us in the room about how we can support better this work. One of the things you had talked about was the kind of reading and comprehension standards as barriers in Massachusetts when it came to hiring more teachers for schools. So one of my questions was about how we can push for maybe more legislative change if that is really such an exclusionary barrier. When I think about Massachusetts, I know it has a Luso caucus that spans the Portuguese, Cape Verdean, and Brazilian community. And it's like a pretty large group and also involved in PALCUS. And then I also think about the Black and Latino caucus, which has a stake in the Portuguese language. And then kind of more broadly, other immigrant communities that might be experiencing similar barriers that want their languages in schools as well. So just thinking if you could share any thoughts on how much of that is a barrier and what we can do to help advocate for that. Thank you.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, is that, them having to pass both this communication and literacy skill and the world language is sometimes impossible because their native language was Portuguese. And for me, myself, as a native, I'm a native Portuguese speaker, but I started learning English in elementary school, and the communication and literacy exam was tough for me. Never mind somebody that's only been here, maybe a decade or a few years, that's highly proficient in the content, in the target content, but not in English. And I do think that it is important to have the English communication skills as well, but maybe not to the extent of the MTEL. And so, I mean, this is something that I would like to go to advocate for, and try to change that in legislation, as like maybe just for world language teachers also, like they need to look at it, and maybe it's not a blanket, like all teachers need this requirement. Maybe we need to look at specifically the requirements for language teachers. And I know that I've done some work with JNCL Nicholas at Language Advocacy Days at Capitol Hill, advocating for different language policies. But this isn't something that I've had enough time to set aside to go to legislation for and fight for. But I mean, I have talked to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education about it. And unfortunately, I think that the next step is going to legislation and trying to have this change and advocate for this change.
Thank you. Okay, so we are going to go to Conceição. She has a question. Go ahead, Conceição.
A question. The question I had earlier was for Mia, but then I saw that you teach you have the Portuguese in your school, the public schools. How many times a week? How many times a week do you have it, and what time of the day?
Sure. So it's different for all of our levels. So at the high school, where we've had an established program, students have it for every day for 40 something, I think 48 minutes a day for 5 days a week. And at the middle schools, it's a little bit different. So some of our middle schools had different programming. A majority of students have it once every 3 days. And then we're trying to create a cohort for next year where the students are able to have it 2 out of the 3 days out of the school year, like each cycle, every 3-day cycle. So they'll have it for 2/3 of the year. And then at the elementary, it's very, very little. It's just exposure. This is the first year that we implemented it in 15 out of our, I'm saying Portuguese and Spanish, 15 out of our 17 elementary schools. So they only have it once every 6 days for half the year. So it's very, very little exposure, but it's a type of start.
Thank you, obrigada. Well, if I can help in any way, my last name is Andrade. I took it off the Zoom because I was talking to friends, and I live in Maryland. And I also know about my colleague at the World Bank, Lourdes Domingues, was the director of the Portuguese school in Washington, D.C. I don't know if the school still exists or if she is still here, but you must know. I don't know. Okay.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure.
No.
I don't know if PALCUS.
Okay. I will see you tomorrow at the gala.
Great. Look forward to talking to you. Awesome. So Professor Cristiano, I muted you real quick because there was some background noise, but you can ask your question now.
All right. Hey, hello everyone from Newark, New Jersey, East Coast. So I teach in public school here. I don't teach at Eastside High School. I teach at Science Park High School. We're a magnet school in Newark. I've been here for 20 years, started the Portuguese program here. Most people don't know that there's another school in the city of Newark that teaches Portuguese in public schools. But I just want to add a couple of things to what Ms. Correia said and Ms. Vicente. Portuguese is definitely something that's growing here in our community. I have about 130 kids each year through 4 levels. We do 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. I teach all 4. We have IB, also levels 1 and 2 of IB, which is mixed with a level 3 and 4. So our program here is massive. We worked with Zé Carlos Jordão from the Institute, also with Caixinha. He helps a lot as well. Look, I'm familiar with them. They come here often. They were just here over the weekend as well. There was a concert, the Amalia concert over at Carnegie Hall. So, I mean, Portuguese is definitely for all. Majority of my classes are not even heritage or native speakers. Right? There are kids that want to take Portuguese to learn a third or second language. A lot of Spanish background speakers, namely Ecuadorian. Also, Brazilian speakers are our highest population now, more than Portuguese. Also, so we have to keep that in mind. I teach with both accents. I am from Portugal. I'm from outside Lisbon. If you guys are familiar with Cadaval, Torres Vedras, Caldas da Rainha, Peniche, I'm from that area. But I do have to teach with both accents to accommodate to the reality that we have, which is totally fine because I get a kick out of it as well. And for a lot of the Spanish speakers, even speaking with the Brazilian variant, with the gerundio and other conjugations and forms, it's easier for them to pick it up. So they feel more comfortable with it. And it's totally fun. You know, sometimes the classes get a little complicated because you have Portuguese, Brazilian, Cape Verdean, American, Spanish speakers. It's a hot mess. But for 40 minutes a day, it becomes a very eclectic classroom. So much that we don't call it Portuguese, we call it Estudos Lusófonos here because we go through everywhere. But it is classified as Portuguese class, obviously. But I just want to say that definitely, I think it was Miss Vicente that said that Portuguese has to be looked at for everyone, not just for the kids that are from Portuguese parents. Or now we're getting a big mix of kids, right? The parent is Ecuadorian, the dad's Portuguese, you know, the mom's Portuguese, o pai Americanos. We got a big mix. So we have to accommodate to that. Also with what Ms. Correia was saying, in terms of the biliteracy, we do that obviously here as well. The seal of biliteracy only for students that take it for 4 years because of the level of the test itself. But we also do the NUEL exam. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. I know Camões pushes it. They give a lot of credit university-wise around here. A lot of my students have gone in as sophomores because of the credits that they give on the NUEL, especially if they score high. They've gotten more credit for that than for the biliteracy seal, which might be a little oxymoronish, you know, if you think about it, because the biliteracy seal is a state document and the NUEL is an outside company, even though they are sanctioned by the AP exam. But it's worked out. And also a great thing that my kids like doing, sort of a competition. Oh, that period's over. I don't have the next class, so it's all right. The other thing that we do, I also work with I don't work with them, but I've been part of them, but I'm not involved directly with the AATSP, with the Association of Teachers Spanish and Portuguese. They do the National Portuguese exam, which is just something that they do to get the schools involved. But if the kids score in a good percentile, they do send medals and certificates. So it gets the kids engaged in something to look forward to also take the class, even though it's only a 2-year requirement. So there's like little things out there that can push the kids. Obviously, we're in a community that has a lot of Brazilian and Portuguese speakers. There's always concerts around, festas, música, igreja, escolas portuguesas also. We have a bunch of them. There's kids that do both. But the fact that our classes are so eclectic with kids of different backgrounds, 25 to 30 kids in each class, shows that it's definitely growing. But the problem is definitely teachers. I agree with you guys as well. It's very difficult to find teachers because, one, convincing someone to be a teacher in the year 2025 is not easy because it's not a marketable job anymore, to be honest with you. I love my job, but it's very difficult to convince someone to become an educator in the years that you have to put in and the way the legislation is going. It's almost like you don't want to do that. You need it. You know you need them, but you don't want to tell kids to go into them. But it's very difficult. And also, I mean, I know that Eastside High School, most of my friends are there. The principal is a good friend of mine as well. They can't find teachers to teach Portuguese. They've been struggling. They're trying to convince me to go there, but then they're not going to find anybody here in this school to teach Portuguese. It's been an ongoing struggle, and I know that they're putting a lot of effort into it, getting teachers certified, filling in positions. And sometimes it is a teacher that's from a different subject that they're trying to certify to get them in. Sometimes they leave and go somewhere else, especially community schools suffer from that. I know Ms. Vicente talked about that. But the efforts are being put in. I just think it's very difficult to find resources, human resources for the efforts. That's it. And I just want to say this is an awesome initiative. I always participate in the PALCUS initiatives, and I get the emails. Thank you for that. And I think you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you, Cristiano. We appreciate it.
Yep.
I have a question for Cristiano, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. It's so weird because you guys can see me. I can see you guys, but you guys can't see me.
That's how they
So
work.
Newburgh is a lovely community mix of, like you mentioned, Portuguese, Brazilian, love Ferry Street. I lived in Newburgh for a little bit. And I can definitely relate to the mixed accent.
I still live here.
That's my day-to-day, the mixed accent. I was born in Brazil and also Portuguese. My grandparents are from the mainland. And, New Bedford, I grew up around a lot of Azorians. So I have a very mixed Portuguese accent. But cool. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned, I wanted to know, what are the qualifications for students to get into your IB program?
Okay, so
do they need to be native speakers?
No, not at all. So
is it the SL or the HL IB?
All right, so that's a lot of things going on, but I got you. Listen, so we do the IB where it's a selected cohort of students. They enter IB their junior year. Right, so everyone comes into high school. We follow the state standards. Plus, since we're a magnet school, you have to test to get in. Mm-hmm. The focus is science. We have double periods of science. That's why it's called Science Park High School. But we have Portuguese, French, and English. Here, obviously English, but we have Spanish, Portuguese, and French as world languages. We used to have Latin also, but there aren't teachers, so we couldn't continue with that. We had Latin because of the SAT, to help with. I don't have the next period, so it's fine. But with the IB, so 2 years, the freshman year, sophomore year, they take level 1 and 2. And then within level 1 and 2, in the language perspective, there's going to be the cohort of students that apply to be an IB. They go through interview, all this stuff. And then from those students, they give it to the language teachers because obviously the focus is going to be science, math, English. And then the history teachers take a look at the cohort. We take a look at the cohort. Usually, like this year in level 3, I have 15 students. I have a small number of students. It's still this pandemic vibe going on coming in. But seniors, I have 23. So I have a lot of seniors. Freshmen and sophomore, forget it. It's like 30 kids deep. Mm-hmm. But then the schedule doesn't fit because I'm the only Portuguese teacher. So I teach levels 1, 2, 3, and 4 throughout the day. Yeah. So like this year, I only have one group of level 1, but 2 of level 2. Next year, I'll have 2 of 1, 1 of 2. So there'll be more openings. So sometimes we can look at the number of students that get into it. But with the requirement to get into level 3, it's pretty much on me because I'm the only one that can really gauge where these students are. So if I feel that there is a student that did well in level 1 and 2, that by the end of level 2, the comprehension is there, the writing is there, the reading is there, the reading comprehension is there. Usually the speaking is what comes last all the time because they're shy of speaking, of mispronouncing, because we have so many different accents, so many different backgrounds here in the classroom, from heritage to native to half heritage, a hot mess, right? So what we do is I see if they're comfortable and I allow them to get in. If they're not only part of the IB, but if they're also part of just wanting to take the third level of the class, because level 3 and IB1, SL or HL is mixed. We'll do both SL and HL because when it comes to the testing time, even though the hours are a little more, I'll work on getting the hours done for the HL with the student, but they have to take a balance of certain number of SL tests and certain number of HL tests. So if the student, I feel, and obviously they're going to trust me here, it's 20 years experience, right? And with IB, we've had IB since 2014, 15, something like that. I think it's 14. I'll just see okay, this student, I think that they'll jam out HL really well, and I'll allow it to happen. The biggest difference in the curriculum, just so you know, is that they have to read 2 novels in HL. So Obviously,
Yeah.
you're not gonna come out with like Os Lusíadas, you know, or Gil Vicente or something like that. The kids are gonna not be into it. So that's where I try to make it eclectic. If you ever think about doing it, look into like more contemporary stuff like Paulo Coelho's Alquimista. Kids love it. You know, you can go to Angola. I use Onjaki's Bom Dia Camaradas. It's post-colonial, so it's like a world after the war. You know, parts of
I just did I had a Welcomista in my Portuguese classes, and I just did a book club with a group of my friends. They read it in English, I read it in Portuguese.
Yeah.
Fun.
And you know what? A lot of the kids are gonna read, like if you use Alquimistas, that's a big book that I use, right? That's like my end of course thing. The kids love it, they feel inspired, like they're gonna conquer everything. And some of them do read it in English, and then they can compare. And then that's when, even though I don't teach through translation, I teach through interpretation and context. When you use that book, they're going to be like, oh, isto em inglês totalmente diferente. O significado em português totalmente diferente. And then I have versions from Brazil e Portugal. So they see the variants too. So we do a lot of different stuff here. And if you have that balance, it's pretty cool. But if you want to know more about IB, I mean, my email, I can give you my email and you can always email me. I'm not an expert in it, but I've been doing it for 10 years about. So
yeah, we have at New Bedford, we have IB Spanish, but we don't have it for Portuguese. So that would be interesting to explore.
And then there's the IB diploma.
Yeah,
and then
we have the diploma program.
Yeah, diploma. All right, perfect. So that's what
we have the middle years program at the middle schools as well.
Oh, that's cool. We do not have that anywhere in Newark.
So I had to develop the curriculum for that. So I learned a lot of IB language.
It's not easy.
I know.
No. But if you ever want anything, my email, I mean, I'm sure PALCUS has my email too. They can get it to you.
Okay, thank you.
I'll put in the comments, I guess.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Sorry for lingering on.
No, it was great. So there's a couple of questions or comments here about, and we only have about 25 minutes left. What are the possible options for a J1 visa teacher to remain in the US after completing the 5-year program? There's a question here about if somebody is taking online courses, how could they get credit, high school credit, for the seal of biliteracy, things like that. We have a comment here from Sandra Carapinha, who is my daughter's tutor. She's the one that does the weekly lesson. She's the founder of Learn European Portuguese Online, and it's an online hub for Portuguese online lessons and content creation on YouTube. She wanted to share that the issue that many Portuguese children are spread out, and online is really the best option for them in many cases. All of her teachers are in Portugal, and even she has a hard time hiring teachers there. There's a lack of teachers everywhere, so bringing teachers from Portugal might be an issue too. And then she also made a comment about some books that she is finding another option for books. I believe I saw that somewhere. But there's a question here from Joseph Rendeiro, which is a perfect lead in to what I wanted to close with. And he says he's a retired principal from Newark, New Jersey, former director of the Clark, New Jersey Portuguese School. What would be the viability of PALCUS serving as a clearinghouse for Portuguese language instructional efforts, resources, and professional growth? So very timely question. Thank you, Joseph, for the question. And I think it's possible. Am I sharing? Yes, there we go. That we can form a task force, right? But the task force is made up of multiple people. It's not just one person. So I would say anybody that was on this Zoom or in this room, or who watches this Zoom later, that wants to be involved with this effort, to join this task force, because there are a lot of things that we can be doing. As simple as putting some toolkit pieces together, right? That could be a letter to the school board, that could be some curriculum, that could be art projects, that could be historical lessons, Elsa, per your offer. There's a lot of things that can go into this toolkit that then people can use regardless of where they are, right? And so we need multiple people to help with that. Help with uncovering resources. And this task force would need to meet regularly to maintain the momentum. So, oftentimes we have great intentions and we want to start something, but we all have busy lives. And so, we just have to find people who are have the perseverance and commitment to see this through, right? This can't just be a 1 or 2 meetings and then we kind of go on with our busy lives, right? If it's going to be something that we want to start, we need a good group of people, even if it's 5 or 6 people nationally across the board, across the country, to really commit to it and continue to drive it. And maybe those 5 or 6 people change over time, but it really does have to be driven by the community, right? Because I think the whole message here is that if we don't drive it and we don't show that we want it, then the schools and the community, they're not going to do it either. So comments here, questions here about, what other types of things could this task force work on? What else could be in the toolkit? What else could we be creating that would be helpful for people to start, whether it's a club, whether it's a community school, whether it's trying to get it in their public schools? Would love to hear from the panelists, from people in the room, people online, what would be helpful? Yes, do you want to come up and?
Well,
okay.
And one of the struggles we have is very similar to Leslie, for like our parents who might be Portuguese, for what neither might be Portuguese, and so the child gets no reinforcement at home. We get them for about 2 to 3 hours a week, and so we're constantly starting back at square one. So are there any ideas for like online resources, even like just reading a book, so they can read a book together, YouTube guides them through a child book, at different levels. So we can just integrate some of that, on a regular basis in the home to promote the language for their acquisition and just the love of learning Portuguese as a family.
So the question for those online was kind of echoing Leslie's comments about the language not being reinforced at home. And so question about, are there resources or ideas that teachers, because she's a teacher in Newark, I believe, Warren, New Jersey, as a community school in Warren, are there ideas that the teachers can either, or resources they can give the families to say, listen, I know you may not speak Portuguese fluently, but here's what you can do with your child at home to reinforce what we're teaching them, in class?
Yes, there are. So there's a lot of them. So as a teacher, I am not sure if her students, if she has, if her students have access to Escola Virtual. So Camões usually gives the school a certain amount of them every year. But if you don't, you can buy them. They're very reasonable. Parents can buy them. I think they're less than maybe $20, maybe $40, and it's for the year. So you buy it's an ID that you register Escola Virtual, which is from Porto Publishing. And once you get there, the resources are unlimited. I mean, we have, and this is not an exaggeration, we have 7th graders that are addicted to a game, and it's a game to learn Portuguese. I can't think of the name right now. And those kids, all they want to do is, can we play this? And I'm like, and the teacher's like, no, you can't. But it's actually an educational game. There are games that you can learn the language there. There are worksheets. There are read aloud where you listen to the story. And then you answer to the questions. And I'm talking very simple, like preschool level. Well, not preschool level, because the preschoolers, because the preschoolers at that time can listen and then respond, just not really have, they're still working on their writing skills up to 1st grade. But there are so many resources with Porta Editora. And all you have to do, if you don't have it already through the school, is purchase a license to get into the Escola Virtual, and it's just you register, and then you can buy it right through them. I don't know if it's easier to buy it through the school system, which you can. And here we have João Caixinha on our end. I know your area also has an amazing coordinator, so he can probably help. And it's endless. The resources for the ages are endless, and you literally have this amazing online library, and it's by age. So you can pick, and then once you pick by age, so if your student is 6 years old or 8 years old, and you pick not just Portuguese, you pick Portuguese outside of Portugal. So there's a curriculum there just for our students that are learning Portuguese outside of the country and other communities. So yes, that's available.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of that and say, as mentioned earlier, just like Leslie said, Escola Virtual is awesome. The company themselves, they have, they provide great customer support. So if you have any issues in being able to know how to navigate their system, they're always available to help you with that, to train you, to guide you through that. Also, I don't know if your child has like other apps such as like Sora or Epic, but those reading apps also usually have some Portuguese reading books as well. Duolingo is really great to build that vocabulary. And then just like, if you guys watch movies or, I used to love watching Portuguese novellas when I was younger. Maybe not everybody does, but Netflix has a lot of Brazilian, like cute little Brazilian Portuguese movies. So just, finding, maybe you make a movie night, once a week, you find something on Netflix to watch with your child and kind of build that vocabulary together.
So one thing that my husband actually found was a graphic novel in Portuguese called Bia e o Unicórnio, which is it's based on it's a translation of an English series, but he ended up reading the whole series with our daughter when she was little, and it was like, when you read books before you go to bed. And so, that was kind of fun for her because it's a graphic novel. It's about this unicorn that, has some funny like nutties. It was something about his nose or whatever, I forget. So that was, really cute. And then there are there's been like a kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a burst of bilingual children's books that have come on the market. So there's Andrea Nunes from New Jersey has written a couple. And so there's other, of course there's mine, but there's been like a few others that have also like started to write more bilingual children's books. So again, maybe like, add those to the rotation for nighttime reading, right before bed. But all these lists of books, these lists of ideas, lists of movies, maybe that can go into the toolkit, right? And so here's some suggestions of books to read, suggestions of movies to watch, like kid friendly, more advanced, like those kinds of things. So these are the kinds of items in a toolkit. They sound really simple, but they don't exist right now, right? There is no list of that kind of stuff right now. And if we could get help from, folks online, folks here in the room or whoever else to put those things together. And then yes, PALCUS can act as a clearinghouse to house those items on our website, right? Somewhere. So there's a couple other questions here. I don't know if there was any comments or other questions here in the room. I want to make sure we get everybody. Let's see. There was a comment from, let's see, Rui Souza. Hi, Rui. St. Mary's High School in Stockton, California, probably the first private high school in California to offer Portuguese. Woohoo! And I hope the first of many more to come. Just a quick word on the seal of biliteracy. In addition to the state seals offered, there is an organization that will offer a worldwide recognition, and the organization is Global Seal of Biliteracy, offering certification with global standards. So that's something that we could look into, and again, add to the toolkit, right? The information for that organization. So thank you for that, Rui. I really appreciate it. And you give a shout out to PALCUS for doing this. So thank you for that too. Anaf also asked, my daughter's trying to set up a Portuguese club at the university she attends to show our culture and traditions. So we would love to connect and hear from you about some resources. Yes, again, that's where the toolkit comes in. Like, for example, we started a Portuguese club at my daughter's school, and we just put like a little one pager of here's what we're covering in today's, Portuguese club meeting. We can put that into the PDF and throw those, into the toolkit so people have something to start with, right? They're not trying to, create things from scratch. We just got another question here. Gilda, thank you. Please add me to the email list for the task force. She'll do what she can. Yay, we have our first volunteer. Thank you. There's the question that maybe we can take a few minutes to answer before we still have quite a few, at least 13 minutes. What are the possible options for a J1 visa teacher to remain in the US after completing the 5-year program? I don't know if Leslie or Mia, if you know anything about that.
I mean, as far as I know, they made the commitment to go back because it's supposed to be a cultural exchange. We have some teachers from Spain right now, because it's the same program, who they're back for their second round. So they were in Louisiana for the teachers from Spain program for 5 years, because you have the 3 years. You can extend it for 2, so a total of 5 years. You do have to go back because you made that commitment to make that cultural exchange. But then you can come back again. So right now I have Spanish teachers that are teaching that were here before and are back for their second round. So I don't think you can extend it in the time, but that I know of at least, but you can return.
Okay, thank you for that. We have another volunteer for the task force, Sandra Carabina. Thank you. Yay. So are there any other suggestions for what the task force could do or create to help people? You know, when it comes to policy, for example, where do you start, right? Do you meet with the school board? Do you meet with city council? Do you meet with, yes, Judge?
I comment and question. Obviously, for everyone in this room, and probably most of the people who are online, we're thinking of the Portuguese language in terms of its involvement with Portuguese culture and tradition, and supporting all of that. And I'm in support of that as well. But when we talk about political support for Portuguese in schools and the social utility of Portuguese language, we're not necessarily just talking about Portugal. Now, that may not be the case throughout the United States. It's very much the case in Massachusetts, as your point raised. And to give an example, when I was first appointed to the bench in 1992, we had a tremendous need for Portuguese interpreters. We still do. But the community that needs Portuguese interpreters is no longer the same community. It used to be Portuguese nationals requiring. Now, while that still is a group that requires interpreters, it's largely Brazilians and to a large extent, depending on their age, Cape Verdeans. There's many are Cape Verdean Creole, but also conversant in Portuguese. And the reason I ask about the focus of the task force is if we're just talking about Portuguese language, are we focused on Portugal, given that there was a social utility to the Portuguese language that goes beyond our own ethnic group, and the political support, which I think is very appropriately raised, if the political support is going to come from those who have Cape Verdean constituents, have Brazilian constituents, there's going to be more support for Portuguese language, but it may not be identified with Portugal as a nation. Now, that doesn't mean Portugal as a nation gets forgotten, but are we going to limit ourselves to Portugal as the reason for the Portuguese language, or are we open to considering other benefits to the availability of Portuguese language education?
It's a great point. So for those online, Judge Raposa was asking if the Portuguese language, the task force that we're looking at forming would focus on Portuguese, you know, for Portugal, from Portugal specifically, or would we open to the Portuguese speaking language community, you know, Cape Verdean, Brazilian, and I would say even in California to an extent, the Macaense community, right? So I know how I feel about that. I don't, you know, I don't know if anyone, I don't know if Catherine or anyone else from PALCUS wants to take a first stab at it, but I don't, you know, I think we have to be open as a short answer.
Yeah. Well, yeah, especially if, I mean, I would say, yes, we have to be open to the other Portuguese speakers from other communities, only because part of our argument for wanting Portuguese language education to grow is that it's, you know, it's the 5th most used language online. It's the 6th most spoken language in the world. And we have to be cognizant of the fact that it is the 6th most spoken language in the world, not because of the 11 million people in Portugal and the diaspora that came from Portugal. So I feel like there really is no choice but to acknowledge the fact that we have to include, you know, Portuguese language speakers from Brazil, from Cape Verde, from, you know, even the old African colonies and the Macaenses in California. So yeah.
Okay.
No, and I wanted to add in with that. I think as Portuguese educators, we embrace the whole Lusophone world. If you look at the data in New Bedford, we have its first English, and then, from the USA, then we have our second highest population is Guatemala, and our third is Cape Verde. So we have a huge, Portuguese and Cape Verdean Creole speaking community in New Bedford. But then if you look at the state data from Massachusetts, our highest number of students are from the US. Our second highest number of students are from Brazil in the whole state. And so Brazil is definitely a big piece in this. But I think, all of the Lusophone world countries in general are highly important to be looking at and pulling resources from.
I would like to add on, because I do have a lot to say. First, I would like to say hello to Judge Raposo. I don't know he was there. He's one of my favorite people in the world, and he knows that. So we can't. I get a lot of parents that call to register their students, and the question that I get is, what Portuguese do you teach? So I say Portuguese. What Portuguese do you teach? I said Portuguese. What kind of Portuguese? I said the Portuguese kind. That's usually my answer. So, and then so right now, 40% of my staff is Cape Verdean. And there was a concern that was brought up to me. Well, what are they learning? Well, once again, they're learning Portuguese. But your teachers are Cape Verdean. Yeah. And their first language is Portuguese. That's what they learn in Cape Verde. They're teachers there. They're certified teachers there. Yes, they have their own language. Sometimes I go down the hall and they're, talking to each other in Creole, and I walk by, I'm like, you guys better not be talking about me, and I laugh and I keep going. It doesn't matter. That's just a matter. But my point is, we cannot, I still don't have, I have Cape Verdean students, I have Brazilian students, I have Hispanic students, I have Portuguese students from Madeira, from São Miguel, from Trás-os-Montes, from Lisboa. They're from everywhere. It doesn't matter. I have students, they're not even Portuguese there. That's not the point. We can't go around claiming that our language is the 5th most spoken language in the world and say we don't want Brazilian in our schools. Or we don't want this in our schools. The reason why our language is spoken by that many is because of them, because of all of us together. So we can't say, oh my goodness, Portuguese is, it's getting bigger. It's going to be the 2nd most spoken language. Well, if you take Brazil, I'm just using Brazil as an example, sorry me. But it's true. If you take Brazil out, guess what? It is not the 5th most spoken language in the world. If you take another group out, it is not the 5th spoken. If you take, Portugal, continent of Portugal, even our immigrants from here, it is not. It is the 5th most spoken word because we're all together. And that mentality has to go over across the schools, across the curriculums. That's all I have to say.
It's important to note too that the Newell exam that was mentioned earlier is a global Portuguese, so it's a mix of all the Portuguese Lusophone world.
So is the MTELs. When I took my Portuguese MTEL, most of the questions were about the dynamics and the history and geography and everything of the Brazilian culture. So we're Portuguese teachers. We're certified because we knew that. So we can't, I don't want to say the word hypocrites, but yeah, we can't be hypocrites to tell the Brazilians that's different. No, it's just the way we speak. Just like the Americans here don't say, oh, the British are different. They're a little different. They're a little smoother. Cultures are different. Cultures are different. Language doesn't matter as long as it's the same language.
And I think they need to realize that actually that scenario is enriching for their student and it's preparing them better for their global future. So it's the only way really to expose students to Portuguese is to have all of this.
All well said. Totally agree. So we have arrived at our ending time, but I think there's clearly a need to form this task force. We've had a couple of volunteers. So we will, generate some action items from this session that we've had today, reach out to these volunteers, try to recruit some more volunteers, so be on the lookout for some information in our newsletter and our website and our Facebook pages and all of the social channels that we're on. I want to thank everybody for attending both in person and online. I'd like to thank the Embassy of Portugal for hosting us here today in this beautiful room. And I'd like to thank Mafalda for all of her work and setting us up and making this go as smoothly as possible. I think this was a great start to something that's really needed in our community. And so hopefully we'll be able to turn it into something great. Thank you to our panelists, Mia, Leslie, and Linette. Really great information. We've had a lot of comments here about how great the information was, and they really appreciate the efforts of the work that all of you are doing. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us, and we really appreciate it. We'll be in touch with what we come up with. So with that, we'll say thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. We hope to see the rest of you at the Gala Weekend activities, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.